They started copying the tactics. Hit and run, strike from surprise, never fight on the enemy's terms, make them chase shadows. Earth was occupied. Millions were 3 years past. The Vrax Empire controlled Earth's cities but nothing else. Every day brought new attacks. Every night brought more Vrax casualties. Commander Drax stared at his reports with growing frustration. He had lost more soldiers occupying Earth than in his previous 20 campaigns combined. The humans would not stop, would not surrender, would not accept defeat. In the Korean mountains, Sergeant Kai had become something more than a soldier. He was a teacher now. His original team of 30 had grown to 200. Men and women from all over the region found their way to his camp. They came with nothing except the desire to fight. Kai trained them, made them into weapons. He taught them how to move through forests without making sound, how to live off the land, how to read Vrax patrol patterns, how to build weapons from scrap. Most importantly, he taught them how to think. The Vrax were bigger and stronger. They had better weapons and armor, but they thought in straight lines. They expected logical responses to their actions. Kai taught his fighters to be unpredictable. The Vrax are like machines, he told his students. They follow patterns. If you can see the pattern, you can break it. His tactics were unconventional. Sometimes he attacked supply convoys. Sometimes he ambushed patrols. Sometimes he did nothing for weeks, making the Vrax nervous. They never knew when or where he would strike. They could not predict him because his actions had no pattern. That was the pattern. Kai also studied captured Vrax soldiers. He learned their language, their culture, their psychology. He discovered things that terrified them. The Vrax feared uncertainty. They feared disorder. They feared anything they could not control or understand. So Kai gave them exactly that. He started leaving survivors. This was strange behavior for a resistance fighter. Usually you killed all enemies to prevent them from reporting. But Kai did the opposite. He made sure some Vrax survived every attack, wounded but alive. They would return to their bases and tell stories. Stories about the human soldiers who moved like shadows, who struck from impossible distances, who seemed to know exactly where the Vrax would be. The survivors talked about the leader, the one who never missed, the one who could kill from a kilometer away with a single shot. They said he targeted commanders specifically, always through the weak point where the Vrax crystal armor connected at the neck. Always one shot, always fatal. They started calling him the Ghost. Fear spread through the Vrax occupation forces. Soldiers who had never known fear in 3,000 years of conquest were afraid now. They checked shadows. They startled at sounds. They rotated commanders every week, trying to prevent Kai from learning their patterns. Nothing helped. He always found them. One night, Kai targeted a Vrax colonel named Thren. Thren was experienced, smart. He had fought in dozens of campaigns. He took precautions. He varied his routes. He never slept in the same place twice. He surrounded himself with guards. It did not matter. Kai studied Thren for 2 weeks. He learned the colonel's habits, his fears, his weaknesses. Then on a rainy night when visibility was terrible and all sensors were compromised, Kai struck. One shot from 800 meters through the rain. Thren died instantly. His guards never saw where the shot came from. They fired wildly into the darkness, hitting nothing. Kai was already gone, moving through terrain the Vrax could not follow. He left his signature behind. A single spent shell casing marked with Korean characters. The Vrax had learned to recognize these. It meant the Ghost had been there. It meant someone important was dead. Commander Drax became obsessed. He committed an entire division to hunting Kai. 5,000 soldiers. The best trackers. The most advanced sensors. All focused on finding one human. It was unprecedented, embarrassing, but necessary. Kai was more than a soldier now. He was a symbol. Every resistance group on Earth knew his name. They copied his tactics. They told his stories. He was proving that humans could win. The Vrax tried everything. They used orbital surveillance to scan the mountains. They deployed drones with thermal sensors. They interrogated captured resistance fighters. They offered huge rewards for information. Nothing worked. Kai was invisible when he wanted to be, and when he wanted to be seen, it was already too late for his targets. Lieutenant Hana was Kai's second-in-command now. She had found her way to his camp 2 years ago. After Vrax soldiers killed her family, she came looking for revenge. Kai gave her something better. Purpose. He taught her everything he knew about tactics, strategy, and survival. She learned quickly. Now she led half the operations while Kai led the other half. They doubled their effectiveness. Hana was different from Kai. Where he was patient and calculated, she was fierce and direct. Where he studied patterns, she studied people. Together, they made an effective team. Kai planned the strategy. Hana executed the tactics. Their fighters trusted both of them completely. One day, they captured a Vrax intelligence officer. Most captured Vrax chose death over providing information. But this one was different, younger, less experienced. Kai saw an opportunity. He did not torture the prisoner. That was against his rules. Instead, he talked to him, asked questions, listened. He learned that young Vrax soldiers were terrified of Earth duty. They saw it as a death sentence. Stories about the ghost had spread throughout the Empire. New soldiers arrived already afraid. This information was valuable. Kai realized he was not just fighting a military campaign. He was fighting a psychological war. Every Vrax he killed, every commander he eliminated, every impossible victory he achieved weakened the enemy's will. The Vrax military was beginning to crack. Not from casualties, though those were heavy, but from fear. He released the young intelligence officer, gave him food and water, then sent him back to the Vrax lines with a message. "Tell your commanders," Kai said, "that Earth will never be theirs. Tell them we will fight for 100 years if we must. Tell them that I am just one soldier. There are millions more like me. Tell them to leave while they still can." The officer returned to his base and reported everything. Commander Drax read the report with cold anger. This human was mocking them. The Vrax Empire did not retreat, did not negotiate, did not fear. But even Drax had to admit the situation was deteriorating. 3 years of occupation, and they controlled less territory than when they started. Human resistance was growing stronger, not weaker, and at the center of it all was one man, one soldier who refused to die. Reports about Kai reached Queen Vela on Krynn. She read them with growing concern. One human soldier had become a legend. His tactics were being copied on other occupied worlds. Previously pacified populations were becoming restless. The Vrax Empire, which had never failed in 3,000 years, was failing now. Because of one man, because of Kai. She ordered her intelligence director to compile everything they knew about this human. The report was disturbingly thin. Name Kai Jin-woo, age 32, former Special Forces, confirmed kills over 1,000, estimated indirect responsibility, 3,000 more. Methods unpredictable. Weaknesses none identified. Location unknown. Status active. Vela stared at the report for a long time. This was impossible. One individual should not be able to influence an entire war. The Vrax had technology, numbers, resources. They should be able to neutralize any single threat. But they could not find him. Could not predict him. Could not stop him. For the first time in her long reign, Queen Vela felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. The Empire had always won through superiority. They were better than everyone else, stronger, smarter, more advanced. But these humans were winning through something else, something the Vrax did not understand. They were winning through determination, through refusal to accept reality, through one soldier who somehow kept fighting when logic said he should be dead. Vela made a decision. She would go to Earth herself. She would oversee operations personally. She would see this Kai with her own eyes. And she would end this embarrassment once and for all. The Vrax Queen had never visited an occupied world during active resistance. But these were unprecedented times. This human had forced her hand. In his mountain camp, Kai received intelligence about the Queen's decision. His network of informants had grown sophisticated over 3 years. They had sources inside Vrax Command now, collaborators who secretly worked for the Resistance. They brought word that Queen Vela herself was coming to Earth. Kai gathered his fighters and showed them the intelligence. They understood immediately what it meant. The most important target imaginable. If they could eliminate the Vrax Queen, the war might end. The Empire might collapse. Earth might be free. "It is a trap," Hana said quietly. "They want you to try. They will be ready," Kai nodded. Of course it was a trap. The Vrax were not stupid. They knew he could not resist such a target. They would be waiting. The security would be impossible to breach. The odds would be overwhelming. It was a perfect trap, he smiled. "Then we spring it," he said. Queen Vela sat on her black throne and watched the stars. For 3,000 years, her people had ruled this part of space. The Vrax Empire controlled everything. 47 different alien races bowed to her. Their worlds belonged to the Vrax now. Their technology was Vrax technology. Their future was whatever the Queen decided it would be. Vela was 9 feet tall. Her body was covered in a hard shell that looked like crystal. This shell could stop almost any weapon. All Vrax had this armor. It made them nearly impossible to kill. They were strong, smart, and had never lost a war. When the Vrax came to your world, you had 2 choices: surrender or die. Most species chose to surrender. Today, a messenger entered the throne room. He was smaller than the Queen, but still impressive. His crystal armor shined in the light. He bowed low before speaking. "My Queen, we have found a new species in the outer regions." Vela did not move. New species were common. The galaxy was large. There were always more worlds to conquer. Always more resources to take. "Tell me about them," she said. The messenger pulled up a display. Images of strange creatures appeared. They walked on 2 legs like the Vrax, but they were much smaller. Their skin was soft, no armor, no natural weapons. They looked weak. "They call themselves humans," the messenger said. "They come from a planet called Earth. Our scouts say they are primitive. They have basic space travel, but nothing advanced. They fight among themselves constantly. Their world is divided into many different groups that compete for resources." Vela studied the images. The humans looked fragile. Their ships were small and poorly armed. Their weapons seemed ancient compared to Vrax technology. "This would be easy. Send Commander Drax with the 5th Armada," she ordered. "Give him 1 cycle to bring these humans under control. Standard procedure. Destroy their military, occupy their cities, take their resources. If they resist, make an example of them." The messenger bowed again and left. Vela returned to watching the stars. She did not think about the humans again. They were just another species to add to the Empire. Number 48. It was routine. Far away on the edge of human space, Captain Han Day stood on the bridge of his ship. The Indomitable was a small frigate. It was not built for major battles. Han and his crew protected mining colonies in the outer system. It was quiet work, usually. Boring, even. But today was different. His second officer, Lieutenant Yuna, was staring at her screen. Her face was pale. "Captain, you need to see this." Han walked over. The screen showed sensor readings from deep space. Large objects were moving toward human territory. Very large. "Moving very fast. How many?" Han asked. 200 ships, Yuna said quietly. "Maybe more. They are bigger than anything we have ever built." "Captain, what are they?" Han did not answer right away. He was thinking. Humans had never met aliens before. They had looked for them for centuries, sent messages into space, built radio telescopes, searched for any sign of other intelligent life, and now finally here it was. But these ships were not coming in peace. "You did not bring 200 warships to say hello. Send a message to Earth Command," Han said. "Tell them we have contact with an unknown force. Tell them to prepare every ship we have." Yuna nodded and started typing. Her hands were shaking slightly. The rest of the crew had gone silent. They all understood what was happening. First contact with aliens, and those aliens were bringing an invasion fleet. Over the next few hours, more reports came in. Every human monitoring station in the outer system was detecting the same thing. A massive fleet approaching at incredible speed. Earth Command issued emergency orders. Every military ship was to take defensive positions. Every colony was to prepare for evacuation. Every civilian ship was to run, but Han did not run. The Indomitable stayed at its post. His crew looked at him, waiting for orders. Han knew his small ship could not stop 200 alien warships. He knew they would probably all die. But he also knew something else. Someone had to stand and fight. Someone had to show these aliens that humans would not just surrender. "We stay," he said simply. No one argued. His crew had served with him for years. They trusted him. If Captain Han said they would stand and fight, then that was what they would do. Yuna walked over and stood beside him. She was young, only 25 years old. She had graduated at the top of her class from the academy. She was brilliant with tactics and strategy. She had a bright future ahead of her. Or she did until today. "Captain," she said quietly, "we cannot win this fight." "I know," Han replied. "Then why are we staying?" Han looked at the screen showing the approaching fleet. Those ships would be here in less than a day. Earth would follow soon after. Millions of humans lived on Earth. Billions more across the colonies. All of them were about to meet an enemy they could not defeat. All of them were about to face extinction, maybe, but they deserved to see someone fight back. They deserved to know that their military would not just run away. Because someone has to, Han said. Because if we do not fight, they will think we are easy prey. Because we are human, and humans do not surrender without a fight. Yuna nodded slowly. She understood. They all did. The crew returned to their stations and prepared the ship for battle. They checked weapons, reinforced shields, ran system diagnostics. They did everything they could to get ready. It would not be enough, but they would do it anyway. That night, Han walked through his ship. He visited every section, talked to every crew member. He thanked them for their service. He told them he was proud to serve with them. He did not tell them everything would be okay. That would be a lie. Instead, he told them the truth. They would probably die tomorrow. But they would die fighting. They would die protecting their home. And that meant something. When he returned to the bridge, Yuna was still there. She had not slept. She was studying everything she could find about military tactics, looking for any advantage, any trick that might help them survive. Find anything useful? Han asked. She shook her head. Then she smiled, just a little. It was a sad smile. No, sir. But I will keep looking, Han smiled back. That was the human spirit right there. Even when death was certain, even when the enemy was overwhelming, humans kept trying. They kept fighting. They kept hoping. Maybe that would be enough. Maybe it would not. But it was who they were. The alien fleet was coming. The Vraks were coming. They thought this would be easy. They thought humans would break like all the others. They had conquered 47 species. They had won every war for 3,000 years. They had never faced defeat, but they had never faced humans before. They did not know what humans were capable of. They did not know that humans had been fighting wars for their entire history. They did not know that humans never gave up, never surrendered, never stopped fighting no matter how bad things looked. They were about to learn, and the first lesson would be taught by Captain Han and the crew of the Indomitable. The Vraks fleet entered the solar system like a storm. 200 massive warships, each one larger than any human building. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons already charged. Commander Drax sat in his command chair and watched the human system spread out before him. It looked peaceful. Small planets orbiting a yellow star, primitive space stations, weak defenses. This would be over quickly. Broadcast the standard message, Drax ordered. His communications officer nodded and sent the message to every human receiver. It was the same message the Vraks had sent 47 times before. Surrender all weapons. Hand over all resources. Accept Vraks' rule, or be destroyed. Simple. Clear. Every species eventually chose surrender. Fighting the Vraks was suicide. But the humans did not surrender. Instead, their ships launched. Every single one. Military vessels, civilian transports, mining ships, even personal craft. They all flew toward the Vraks fleet. Drax watched the sensors with confusion. This made no sense. His intelligence said humans were divided. They fought among themselves constantly. Yet here they were, united, moving together, attacking together. How many human ships? Drax asked. 417, Commander, his tactical officer replied. But they are small, poorly armed. Their shields are weak, Drax nodded. Numbers did not matter when technology was so different. One Vrak ship could destroy 10 human ships, maybe 20. This would still be easy, just messier than expected. Destroy them, he ordered. The Vraks opened fire. Their plasma cannons lit up space with blue-white energy. Human ships exploded by the dozens. The Vraks' shields absorbed human weapons without even flickering. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Within the first hour, 100 human ships were gone. Just debris and radiation, but the humans did not retreat. They kept coming. They adapted their tactics. Ships that could not hurt the Vraks directly started ramming them instead. Damaged vessels turned themselves into missiles. One human frigate, its engines failing and hull torn open, crashed directly into a Vraks destroyer. The impact destroyed both ships. Drax stared at the explosion with something like shock. That was not normal behavior. That was insane. On the bridge of his dying ship, Captain Han smiled. The impact had destroyed the Indomitable, but it had taken a Vraks destroyer with it. His crew was gone. His ship was gone. But he had survived in his escape pod. He activated his communications one last time and broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Hyundai of the Earth Defense Force. To all human forces, to all colonies, to everyone who can hear this, we will make them pay for every meter of space. We will make them bleed for every world they take. We will never surrender. We will never stop fighting. Earth will be free. His message echoed across every human channel. Soldiers heard it. Colonists heard it. People hiding in bunkers on Earth heard it, and they believed it. If Captain Han could take a Vrax destroyer with him, then maybe there was hope. Maybe humans could win. Lieutenant Yuna was on another ship now, the Resolute. She had transferred just before the Indomitable made its final run. Captain Han had ordered her to. He said the military needed smart officers who could learn from this battle. She had not wanted to leave, but she followed orders. Now she commanded 30 soldiers on a desperate mission. The Resolute was badly damaged. Its weapons were offline. Its shields were failing. But Yuna had an idea. A crazy idea. The kind of idea that only made sense when you had nothing left to lose. "Take us to that Vrax supply ship," she ordered. "Ram it if you have to. Get us close." The pilot looked at her like she was insane, but he obeyed. The Resolute turned and accelerated toward a Vrax supply vessel. The supply ship was huge, designed to carry resources for the fleet. It had weapons, but not many. The Vrax did not expect anyone to attack their supply lines during battle. The Resolute crashed into the supply ship's docking bay. The impact killed half of Yuna's team instantly, but the rest survived. They grabbed their weapons and ran into the alien ship. Yuna led them through corridors that were too large, designed for creatures twice their size. They were deep inside the Vrax ship now. There was no going back. 200 Vrax soldiers responded to the breach. They came with plasma rifles and crystal armor that could stop bullets. They were bigger, stronger, better equipped. It should have been over in minutes. But Yuna did not fight fair. She used the environment. She rigged fuel lines to explode. She sealed bulkheads to trap groups of Vrax in sections without oxygen. She turned off the artificial gravity and let her lighter, more agile team move, while the Vrax floundered. It was brutal. It was desperate. It was not the kind of fighting the Vrax had ever experienced. They were used to clean battles, ship against ship, technology against technology. But this was personal combat, close and vicious. And humans were very good at it. They had thousands of years of practice killing each other. When it was over, Yuna and 7 survivors stood in the supply ship's control room. They had won. Somehow, 30 humans had defeated 200 Vrax soldiers. The cost was terrible. 23 of her team were dead. The survivors were all wounded. But they had captured a Vrax ship. The first human victory of the war. Commander Drax received the report with disbelief. One of his supply vessels had been captured. By humans. By 30 humans. How was that possible? His tactical officer had no answer. The Vrax were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They had never lost ground combat before. Never. But there was no time to think about it. The battle was still raging. More human ships kept coming. They attacked with weapons that should not work, tactics that made no sense. They sacrificed themselves to take out single Vrax vessels. They turned civilian ships into bombs. They fought with a ferocity that Drax had never seen. After 6 hours, it was over. The Vrax had won. Most of the human fleet was destroyed. Earth's orbital defenses were rubble. The path to the planet was clear, but the cost had been high. Drax had lost 30 ships. 30 ships. He had never lost 30 ships in a single battle. No Vrax commander had. The invasion of Earth began immediately. Vrax forces landed in every major city. They expected quick surrender. They got the opposite. Humans fought in the streets. They used buildings for cover. They attacked from windows and rooftops. They planted bombs and set traps. Every city became a war zone. The Vrax responded with overwhelming force. They bombarded cities from orbit. They used weapons that turned entire neighborhoods to ash. Millions of humans died in the first week. But the resistance did not stop. It grew. Every human who died seemed to inspire 10 more to fight. Children picked up weapons. Old people became saboteurs. Scientists built improvised explosives. Teachers became snipers. Commander Drax established his headquarters in the ruins of New York. He sent his first report to Queen Vela. The planet was occupied. Human military forces were defeated. But pacification was taking longer than expected. He requested additional troops, just a small number, just to speed things up. On Krynn, Queen Vela read the report with confusion. Additional troops? For a conquered planet? That had never been necessary before. Once the military was defeated, once the cities were occupied, resistance always collapsed. Always. The population accepted Vrak's rule. They had no choice. But apparently, humans did not understand this. They kept fighting even after losing. Vela approved the request. She sent 5 more divisions to Earth, 50,000 additional soldiers. That should be more than enough. Humans were small and weak. How much trouble could they really cause? The mountains of Korea, a soldier named Kai watched the Vrak ships land. He was part of a special forces unit that had been training in the wilderness when the invasion began. His entire team had survived the initial bombardment by pure luck. They were far from any cities, far from any targets. While the Vraks slaughtered millions, Kai and his team were safe in the mountains. But they did not stay safe. They did not hide. Kai gathered his team and spoke to them simply. "The war is not over," he said. "It is just beginning. The Vraks think they have won. They think we will give up. We are going to show them how wrong they are." His team nodded. They were all volunteers, all experts in survival, combat, and guerrilla warfare. They had trained for years to fight behind enemy lines. They had prepared for invasions from other countries, never thinking the enemy would come from the stars. But the principles were the same. Stay hidden, strike hard, disappear, make the enemy afraid. That night, Kai led his first raid. They attacked a Vraks patrol in a mountain pass. The Vraks never saw them. One moment the patrol was marching along the road. The next moment half of them were dead, shot from long range by invisible enemies. The survivors tried to call for help. Kai cut their communications. Then he vanished into the forest with his team. When Vrak's reinforcements arrived, they found only bodies and empty shell casings. No signs of the attackers, no way to track them. It was like fighting ghosts. The next night Kai struck again, and the night after that, each time targeting isolated Virax units, each time disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Within a week his team had killed over 50 Virax soldiers. The cost was 0. Kai had not lost a single person. Word spread quickly. Other resistance groups heard about the ghost soldiers in the mountains. They started copying the tactics. Hit and run. Strike from surprise. Never fight on the enemy's terms. Make them chase. Shadow Queen Vela's ship entered Earth's orbit with an escort of 50 warships. She stood on the observation deck and looked down at the blue planet. From space it looked peaceful. Beautiful, even. Hard to believe this world had cost the Empire so much blood and resources. Hard to believe one species could cause so many problems. Her war council gathered in the command room. These were the Empire's best military minds. Generals who had conquered entire star systems. Strategists who had broken civilizations. They looked uncomfortable now. Earth had humbled them all. Commander Drax presented the latest casualty reports. In 5 years of occupation, the Vraks had lost 12,000 soldiers. 12,000. The Empire had not lost that many soldiers in the previous century combined. Every other conquest in Vrak's history had cost fewer than 100 lives. Some had cost 0, but Earth just kept bleeding them. "Explain this to me," Vela said coldly. "We have superior technology. Superior numbers, superior everything. How are we losing?" Drax chose his words carefully. Failure was not tolerated in the Vrak's Empire. Commanders who failed were executed. But honesty was required. "The humans fight differently than any species we have encountered," he said. "They do not surrender when defeated. They do not accept occupation. They adapt constantly. Every tactic we use, they develop a counter-tactic. Every strategy we employ, they find a weakness. That does not explain one soldier, Vela said. This Kai, he is just one individual. Why can we not eliminate him? The room went silent. The ghost was a sensitive topic. Thousands of resources had been spent trying to find him. Hundreds of operations had been launched. None had succeeded. It was embarrassing. Threx, the intelligence director, stood up. He was old for a Vrax, scarred from dozens of campaigns. He spoke with authority. Kai is not just a soldier, my queen. He is a philosophy, a way of thinking. When we kill a human soldier, we eliminate one threat. When we kill a human commander, we disrupt their operations. But Kai is different. He has trained hundreds of fighters to his level. He has created a doctrine of warfare that spreads by itself. If we killed him tomorrow, his methods would survive. His students would continue. His legend would grow stronger. Vela processed this information. It was disturbing. The Vrax had always won through decapitation strikes. Remove the leadership and the population would follow. But humans were different. They seemed to have endless leaders. And this Kai had made himself immortal through teaching. Show me his file, she ordered. Threx activated a display. Images of Kai appeared. Surveillance photos from before the invasion. Grainy footage from drones. Artist reconstructions from survivor descriptions. He looked ordinary, small by Vrax standards. No visible enhancements or modifications. Just a human male. But the statistics below the images told a different story. Personal kills. 1,400 confirmed. Indirect responsibility. 3,000 additional casualties. Successful operations 217. Failed operations 0. Times captured 0. Times wounded unknown. Psychological impact severe across all Vrax forces. Vela read the report 3 times. The numbers did not make sense. How could one individual have such an impact? She had commanded armies of millions. She had conquered worlds with billions of inhabitants. But one human soldier was causing more problems than entire civilizations. What makes him so dangerous? She asked. Threx pulled up more files. Intercepted communications. Analysis from psychologists. Reports from the field. He thinks like we do, Threx explained, but acts in ways we cannot predict. He studies our patterns, learns our weaknesses, exploits our psychology. He knows we rely on technology and protocol, so he uses tactics that bypass both. He knows we expect logical responses, so he does things that seem irrational but achieve strategic objectives. He has turned his disadvantages into advantages. Another general spoke up. His name was Crix. He had been on Earth since the beginning. Our soldiers are afraid of him, my queen. They check their perimeters constantly. They rotate positions frequently. They avoid certain terrain. And still he finds them. Still he kills them. The fear is spreading. Morale is collapsing. Veterans who have fought in 20 campaigns are requesting transfers away from Earth. They would rather face any other enemy. This was worse than Vela had imagined. The Vrax did not fear. Fear was a weakness they had bred out of their species centuries ago. Their soldiers were conditioned from birth to be fearless. Yet one human had broken that conditioning, had made them afraid. She ordered a comprehensive analysis of human history. She needed to understand where this came from. Why humans were so different. Her researchers worked for weeks and compiled a disturbing report. Humans had been fighting each other for their entire recorded history. 10,000 years of constant warfare. They had developed thousands of different fighting styles, strategies, and weapons. They had written books about war, built schools to teach it, made it into both an art and a science. War was not just something humans did. It was part of their culture, part of their identity. The Vrax, by contrast, had been at peace for most of their history. They only started conquering other species a few thousand years ago, and those conquests had been easy. The other species were primitive, peaceful, unprepared. The Vrax had never faced a true military challenge. They had never fought an enemy that knew how to fight back. Vela read about human conflicts, world wars that killed millions, civil wars that lasted decades, revolutions and rebellions and insurgencies. Humans had fought in every environment imaginable, in space, underwater, in cities, in jungles, in deserts, in frozen wastelands. They had used every weapon imaginable, rocks and sticks, swords and spears, guns and bombs, chemical weapons and nuclear weapons. They were experts at killing, and Kai was their best. a product of 10,000 years of military evolution, trained by experts who had learned from other experts going back generations. He knew tactics the Vraks had never imagined. He understood warfare at a level they could not comprehend. Vela felt something she had not felt in centuries. Uncertainty. The Vraks' empire was built on the idea of superiority. They were better than everyone else. That was why they ruled. But what if they were not better? What if they had just been lucky? What if they had only conquered weak species and now they had finally met a strong one? She looked at her war council. These were supposed to be the best military minds in the empire. But they had been beaten by humans for 5 years. They had no solution, no plan that worked. They were reactive, defensive, afraid. The Vraks' empire had never been any of those things before. "What do you recommend?" she asked Commander Drax. Drax hesitated. Then he spoke the words that no Vraks commander had ever spoken. "We should consider withdrawal, my queen. Earth costs more than it is worth. We are losing resources, losing soldiers, losing morale, and we are teaching other subject species that the Empire can be resisted. Every day we stay, the problem grows worse." Several generals gasped. Suggesting withdrawal was almost treason. The Vraks' empire did not retreat. Ever. Vela's first instinct was to execute Drax for even suggesting it, but she controlled herself. He was right. He was just the only one brave enough to say it. "No," she said. "We will not withdraw, not yet. I came here to solve this problem, and I will solve it. We will capture this Kai. We will break the human resistance, and we will prove that the Vraks' empire cannot be defeated." Drax bowed his head. He had expected this response. The Queen was proud. The Empire was proud. Pride did not allow for strategic retreat. Pride demanded victory at any cost. "We have prepared a plan, my queen," Drax said. "A trap for Kai. We will stage a high-value target meeting. Make it look legitimate. When Kai attempts assassination, we will be ready. We have 5,000 soldiers prepared. Advanced sensors. Kill zones. Backup forces. He will not escape." Vela nodded slowly. It was a simple plan. Perhaps too simple. But sometimes simple plans worked best, and they needed results. The Empire needed to see that humans could be defeated, that Kai could be caught, that the Vraks were still supreme. "Proceed," she ordered. "But understand this. If the plan fails, if Kai escapes, if we suffer more casualties, I will begin considering other options." The Empire cannot bleed forever. That night Vela could not rest. She stood in her quarters looking at images of Kai. This human had done the impossible.
He had made the Vraks' empire question itself.
He had made them afraid. He had made them doubt. One individual, one soldier from a primitive planet. How was it possible? She thought about all the species the Vraks had conquered. Had any of them produced individuals like this? Warriors who refused to quit? Soldiers who became legends? She did not think so. The Vraks had been fortunate. They had conquered the weak and called it superiority. But humans were not weak. They were just smaller. Just less technological, but they had something the Vraks lacked, something intangible, the will to fight even when fighting was hopeless, the refusal to accept defeat even when defeat was obvious, and that quality Vela was beginning to realize might be more powerful than any weapon. The intelligence reached Kai through his network 3 days later. A major Vraks command meeting in Busan, high-ranking officers, important decisions, weak security, perfect target. It was delivered through channels that had been reliable before. The information looked legitimate, but Kai knew better. He gathered his core team in the hidden cave they used for planning, 20 fighters who had been with him from the beginning. They studied the intelligence together. Lieutenant Hana spoke first. "It is a trap," she said flatly. "The timing is too convenient. The security too light. They want you to attack." The others nodded in agreement. They could all see it. The Vraks had been trying to catch Kai for years. This was their latest attempt. Crude but potentially effective. They would surround the location with hidden forces, wait for Kai to show up, then overwhelm him with numbers. Kai studied the map of Busan. The meeting location was in the center of the city. The Vraks controlled every building for blocks around. They would have sensors everywhere, snipers on rooftops, troops in side streets, escape routes blocked. It was a kill box. Anyone who entered would not leave alive. "You are right," Kai said. "It is definitely a trap." Hana relaxed slightly. Good. He was not going to do anything foolish. They would ignore the bait and continue normal operations. There were plenty of other targets, safer targets. They did not need to walk into a trap. Then Kai smiled. Which is why we are going to spring it. The room erupted in protest. Everyone talking at once. This was suicide. The Vraks would be ready. They would have thousands of soldiers. There was no way to win. Kai held up his hand for silence. Think about it, he said calmly. The Vraks will concentrate everything in Busan, every available soldier, every resource. They will pull forces from all over the region. That means everywhere else will be vulnerable. While they wait for us in Busan, we hit them everywhere they are not. Hana saw it immediately. It was brilliant and insane in equal measure. They would attack the trap, but not the way the Vraks expected. They would use the trap against the enemy. Split our forces, Kai continued. I take 30 fighters to Busan. The rest hit every Vraks installation within 100 kilometers. Fuel depots, communication stations, supply routes, all at the same time. The Vraks will have to choose, reinforce Busan or defend everywhere else. Either way, we win. It was risky. If Kai got killed in Busan, the movement would lose its leader. But Kai was betting on something. He was betting that the Vraks wanted him alive. They needed to capture him, to break him publicly, to use him as an example. That meant they would hesitate before killing him, and in that hesitation he would escape. The team spent 3 days planning. They identified 12 high-value targets around Busan, assigned teams to each one, coordinated timing, prepared backup plans. Everything had to happen simultaneously. If even one team was late, the whole operation would fail. Kai personally planned the assault on Busan. He studied maps of the city sewers and drainage systems. The Vraks had dismissed these as entry points. Too small for their large bodies, uncomfortable, unpleasant, but perfect for humans. The team would enter through the water system, hold their breath for 8 minutes while swimming through flooded tunnels, emerge inside the security perimeter. It would be extremely difficult, but possible. The night before the operation, Kai spoke to his fighters. He was honest with them. Some would die tomorrow, maybe most of them. But their sacrifice would hurt the Vraks badly, would buy time for Earth, would inspire others to keep fighting. We are not trying to win the war tomorrow, he said. We are just trying to make sure the Vraks cannot win either. As long as we keep fighting, they cannot declare victory. As long as they cannot declare victory, other species will know the Empire can be resisted. That is our mission, not to win, but to never lose. His fighters nodded. They understood. They had all lost family to the Vraks, friends, homes, everything. Fighting was all they had left. And if they died fighting, at least they died free. The operation began at midnight. 170 fighters moved out to their assigned targets. They traveled in small groups, avoided Vraks patrols, reached their positions silently. At exactly the same time, Kai and his 30-person assault team entered the water system 5 kilometers from Busan. The swim was brutal. Cold water, complete darkness, limited air. 2 fighters did not make it, drowned in the tunnels, but the rest emerged inside the city exactly where Kai planned. They were inside the perimeter, inside the trap. The Vrak sensors had not detected them. Queen Vela waited in her command center. She had positioned herself in Busan to oversee the operation personally. 5,000 soldiers surrounded the meeting location. Advanced sensors covered every approach. Commander Drax was confident. If Kai showed up, they would have him. Then the reports started coming in. Attack on fuel depot 30 kilometers north. Attack on communication station 50 kilometers east. Attack on supply convoy 20 kilometers south. Multiple attacks, all happening at once. The Vraks forces were stretched thin trying to respond. Drax realized immediately what was happening. The trap was being turned against them. Kai had not ignored the bait. He had used it. While the Vraks concentrated in Busan, he was attacking everywhere else. It was brilliant. Send reinforcements to the attacked positions, Vela ordered. That will leave Busan underdefended, my queen, Drax warned. Kai is not coming to Busan, Vela said bitterly. He is too smart for that. He would never walk into such an obvious trap. But she was wrong. Kai was already in Busan, already inside the perimeter, moving through the city with his team. They had bypassed all the sensors by entering through the water. Now they were advancing toward the command center. Not to kill anyone. Kai had a different objective. His team split into 3 groups. One group moved to the power station, another to the communication hub, The third, led by Kai himself, headed for the fortress foundations. They moved silently, killed sentries without raising alarms, placed explosive charges at strategic points throughout the infrastructure. When everything was ready, Kai triggered a small alarm, just enough to alert the Vraks that someone was inside the perimeter, exactly as planned. Thousands of soldiers converged on the area. They swept through buildings, searched every room, found nothing. The humans had already withdrawn to the sewers. Then Kai detonated the charges. The explosions ripped through Busan's power grid. Every light in the city went dark. Communication systems failed. Sensors went offline. In the confusion, Vrak soldiers fired at each other. Commanders lost contact with their units. The entire operation descended into chaos. Kai and his team used the darkness to escape. They moved through the panicked Vrak's forces like ghosts. By the time power was restored 2 hours later, they were gone. Back through the water system. Back to the mountains. All 28 surviving team members made it out. The reports from the other attacks came in throughout the night. Fuel depot destroyed. Communication station demolished. 3 supply convoys ambushed. 2 guard posts overrun. The Vrak's casualties were heavy. Over 200 dead. Equipment losses in the millions. It was their worst single night of the entire occupation. Commander Drax stood in the ruined command center. Everything had failed. The trap had not caught Kai. Instead, Kai had used the trap to inflict massive damage. He had predicted their strategy, turned it against them, made them look like fools. Queen Vela said nothing. She just stared at the reports. Her best plan, her personal oversight, 5,000 soldiers, advanced technology. And one human had beaten them all. Not through superior force, not through better weapons, but through intelligence, through understanding his enemy. Through refusing to fight on their terms, humans were spreading the story already. Intercepted communications showed resistance cells celebrating. They were calling it the Night of Fire, the night Kai made the Queen run, the night the Vrak's empire learned fear. The morale impact was devastating. Human resistance groups everywhere were energized. Vrak soldiers everywhere were demoralized. Vela dismissed her officers. She needed to think. Needed to understand what had just happened. The Vrak's empire had thrown everything at one human soldier, and he had won. Not just survived. Won. He had inflicted more damage in one night than in the previous month. And he had done it while making the empire look incompetent. She pulled up Kai's file again. Stared at his image. This human had become more than a military problem. He was a symbol of Vrak's failure. A living example that the empire could be beaten. As long as he lived, as long as he fought, the empire's reputation would suffer. Other species would question Vrak's superiority. Rebellions would spread. Vela had come to Earth to solve a problem. Instead, the problem had grown worse, and she was beginning to realize that maybe, just maybe, this problem could not be solved. Maybe humans were different. Maybe Earth was the Empire's first real defeat. Maybe the Vraks had finally met their match. That thought terrified her more than anything in her long life. 3 days after the Night of Fire, Queen Vela called an emergency council meeting. Her senior commanders gathered in the repaired fortress. The atmosphere was tense. Failure hung over them like a dark cloud. The Vrak's empire did not tolerate failure. Commanders had been executed for less. Vela entered the chamber and everyone stood at attention. She moved slowly to her seat. Her crystal armor seemed heavier somehow, less bright. The weight of command was showing. This was not supposed to be difficult. Earth was supposed to be simple. Quick occupation, standard procedures, but nothing about Earth was standard. Report, she said simply. Commander Drax stood. He looked tired. 5 years of this war had aged him. He had fought in dozens of campaigns before Earth. All had been easy victories. This was different. This was breaking him. The attacks 3 nights ago were coordinated across the entire region, he began. 12 simultaneous strikes. We lost 217 soldiers. 3 fuel depots destroyed. Communications disrupted for 6 hours. Supply lines compromised. Estimated resource loss is significant. Bella listened without expression. She had read the reports already. She knew the numbers. What she needed was understanding. Why had this happened? How had one human outsmarted 5,000 Vrak soldiers? Analysis? She asked. Threx stood. The intelligence director looked grim. He predicted our strategy completely. Threx said. He knew we would concentrate forces in Busan. He knew we would pull troops from surrounding areas. He used our own plan against us. The assault on Busan was not meant to kill anyone. It was meant to create chaos, to distract us. While we responded to that threat, his real forces hit our vulnerable positions. How did he know? Vela asked. How did he predict our exact response? Because he understands us, Threx replied. He has studied us for 5 years. He knows how we think, how we react, what we fear. He has turned that knowledge into a weapon. The chamber was silent. The implications were disturbing. The Vrax were supposed to be the superior species, the conquerors, the masters. But this human understood them better than they understood themselves. General Crick spoke up. He commanded the ground forces. His units had taken the heaviest casualties. My soldiers are breaking, my queen. They no longer trust their equipment. They no longer trust their training. They see shadows and fire at nothing. They hear sounds and panic. The human resistance is growing bolder while we grow more cautious. We are losing this war. Several commanders shifted uncomfortably. Saying they were losing was dangerous. It could be interpreted as defeatism. But Crick spoke the truth. Everyone knew it. Vela leaned forward. Her voice was cold and hard. This is all because of one soldier, she said. One individual. Tell me his name again. Commander Drax hesitated. There was something about speaking the name aloud. Something that felt dangerous. Like invoking a curse. But the Queen had asked. Sergeant Kai Jin Woo, Drax said. Age 32. Former Special Forces. Republic of Korea Armed Forces, 707th Special Mission Battalion. He pulled up the full file. More complete than before. Years of intelligence gathering had filled in details. No family. Both parents killed in the initial invasion. Recruited into resistance movement immediately. Rose to leadership within 6 months. Current confirmed kill count. 1,400 Virac soldiers. Estimated indirect responsibility through trained fighters and planned operations. 3,000 additional casualties. Success rate 100%. Times captured 0. Times wounded unknown. Current location unknown. The numbers filled the display. Each one representing a failure. Each one showing how completely this human had beaten them. Vela stared at the statistics. They seemed impossible. One individual should not be capable of this level of impact. Kai. Vela repeated the word slowly. Testing it. 2 syllables. Simple. Short. In the Vrax language it meant nothing. Just sounds. But in this context it meant everything. It meant death. It meant failure. It meant fear. She looked around the chamber. Her commanders would not meet her eyes. They were afraid. Not just of this human. They were afraid of the name itself. As if speaking it might summon him. As if acknowledging him gave him power. And perhaps it did. Names had power. They carried meaning. They created reality. The Vrax had always known this. They chose names carefully. Names that inspired fear in their enemies. Names that commanded respect. But now they faced a name that inspired fear in them. A human name. Kai Vela tried to speak again. Tried to issue orders. Tried to demand results. But her voice would not come. She opened her mouth and nothing emerged. Her body felt heavy. Her limbs would not respond properly. For the first time in 3,000 years of existence, the Queen of the Vrax Empire experienced paralysis. It was not physical. Her body worked fine. It was psychological, mental. The weight of understanding crashed down on her all at once. This was not just about one human. This was about what that human represented. Proof that the Vrax were not invincible. Proof that technology and size and strength were not enough. Proof that will and determination and refusal to surrender could defeat anything. Her commanders watched with concern. The Queen had gone silent. She stared at the display showing Kai's image. A small human male, unremarkable appearance. Nothing special by Vrax standards. Yet this creature had accomplished what no one else in galactic history had done. He had made the Vrax Empire afraid. My queen? Drax asked carefully. Are you well? Vela did not respond. Could not respond. She was trapped in her own realization. The Empire had conquered 47 species, ruled over trillions of beings, controlled thousands of worlds, but it could not defeat one human. And if it could not defeat one human, what did that say about the Empire? What did that say about Vrak superiority? Maybe they were not superior. Maybe they had just been lucky. Lucky to meet weak species first. Lucky to build their empire on the backs of those who could not fight back. But now they had met humans. And humans could fight. Oh, how they could fight. The silence stretched. Seconds became minutes. The commanders exchanged worried glances. Their queen was not responding. This had never happened before. Vrak's leaders were decisive, strong, unwavering. But Vela sat frozen, unable to move, unable to think past the terrible truth she had just realized. Finally, Threx spoke. Intercepted communications show the humans celebrating. They have given the operation a name. They call it the night the Queen ran. They say Kai made your majesty flee from Busan. The propaganda value to the resistance is immense. That broke through Vela's paralysis. Anger flooded in to replace the fear. She had not run. She had made a tactical decision. But the humans did not see it that way. They saw weakness. They saw victory. And they were using it to recruit, to inspire, to grow stronger. Kai had done this. One soldier had not just defeated a military operation. He had defeated the psychological advantage the Vraks had always relied on. He had shown everyone that the Empire could be beaten, that Vrak superiority was a myth, that humans would never surrender, and his name, his simple human name, Kai. It echoed through the galaxy now. Other conquered species heard it. Other resistance movements used it. It had become a symbol. A rallying cry. 2 syllables that meant hope. That meant freedom was possible. That meant the Vraks could be defeated. Vela looked at her commanders. These were supposed to be the best military minds the Empire could produce. Veterans of countless campaigns, conquerors of worlds. But they looked beaten, defeated, and they had been defeated by a name, by a story, by a legend that one human had built through sheer determination. Leave me, Vela ordered quietly. The commanders bowed and filed out. When she was alone, Vela stood and walked to the window. She looked out over the occupied city. Vrak's patrols moved through streets. Checkpoints controlled access. Everything appeared secure. But she knew the truth. They controlled nothing. Kai controlled everything. His name, his legend, his refusal to lose. She whispered the name again. Kai. It felt foreign on her tongue, uncomfortable, dangerous. Like speaking it might make him appear. Might bring his wrath down on her. It was irrational, stupid. Yet she felt it anyway. The Vrak's empire, 3,000 years old, ruling over half the galaxy, was afraid of a name. And Vela knew with absolute certainty that the Empire could not win this war. They could kill 1 million humans. They could burn Earth to ash, but they could not kill a name. They could not destroy a legend. Kai would live forever now, in stories, in tactics, in every resistance fighter he had inspired. The Vraks had already lost. They just had not admitted it yet. That night, Queen Vela made her decision. The Empire would withdraw from Earth, not immediately, not obviously, but strategically, over months, making it look like a choice rather than a defeat. The Vraks would leave, and they would never return. Because one human soldier had taught them something they had never learned before: fear. The announcement came 6 weeks after the Night of Fire. Queen Vela addressed the Vrak's empire from her throne on Krynn. Her message was broadcast to every conquered world, every military unit, every citizen. The Empire would withdraw from human space. Effective immediately, she did not call it a retreat. The Vrak's language had no word for retreat. Instead, she called it strategic resource reallocation. Earth was not valuable enough to justify continued investment. Other fronts required attention. The Empire was making a calculated business decision. Nothing more, but everyone knew the truth. The Vraks were leaving because they could not win. They were abandoning Earth because humans had beaten them. 5 years of occupation, 12,000 casualties, billions in lost resources. And for what? They controlled some cities. That was all. The rest of Earth belonged to the Resistance, belonged to people like Kai. The withdrawal took 2 months. Vrak's forces evacuated in stages. They destroyed everything they could not take. Blew up installations, burned supplies, eliminated collaborators. They wanted to leave nothing behind that humans could use, but they also moved carefully, quickly, like they were afraid, like they wanted to leave before something terrible happened. Kai's fighters harassed them constantly. Not enough to stop the withdrawal, just enough to make it painful. Sniper attacks, sabotage, ambushes, every convoy lost vehicles. Every evacuation site came under fire. The Vraks could not leave fast enough. Their discipline was breaking. Soldiers abandoned positions early. Officers falsified reports to justify faster departure. The mighty Vraks military was running away. On the final day, Commander Drax stood in the evacuation zone. His transport was leaving in an hour. He looked at Earth one last time. A beautiful planet. Rich resources. Good climate. Should have been an easy conquest. Should have been another jewel in the Empire's collection. Instead, it had become a graveyard. A humiliation. A lesson. A human broadcast reached his communicator. It was on all frequencies. Impossible to block. General Han Day's voice. The same captain who had commanded the Indomitable 5 years ago. He had survived. Risen through the ranks. Now he led Earth's reformed defense forces. This is General Han Day of the Earth Defense Force. To the Vraks Empire. Remember this day. Remember what it cost you. Remember that you came here with 200 ships and left with shame. Remember that humans will never surrender. Never bow. Never accept conquest. And remember the name, Kai. Remember it when you look at the stars. Remember it when you plan your next invasion. Remember that there are millions more like him. And if you ever return, you will meet them all. Drax shut off his communicator. He did not need to remember. He could never forget. None of them could. Earth was burned into Vraks military consciousness now. The planet where the Empire broke. The species that refused to lose. The soldier whose name meant defeat. The last Vraks transport lifted off. Earth was free. The occupation was over. Humans emerged from shelters. From mountain camps. From underground bunkers. They looked at the sky and saw no alien ships. Just stars. Just possibilities. They had won. Somehow. Against impossible odds. They had won. 5 years later, Earth had rebuilt. The cities were repaired. The population was recovering. But everything was different now. Humans had learned they were not alone in the universe. They had learned that aliens were real. And they had learned those aliens could be beaten. The solar system was now a fortress. Defensive platforms surrounded every planet. Weapon stations filled the asteroid belt. Sensor nets monitored deep space constantly. Earth would never be caught unprepared again. And the military had changed. Every soldier trained in guerrilla warfare now. Every officer studied Kai doctrine. Every unit practiced the tactics that had defeated the Vraks. Lieutenant Yuna was Admiral Yuna now. She commanded Earth's first fleet. 20 new warships built with captured Vraks technology. Not as advanced as Vrak ships, but good enough. And crewed by humans who knew how to fight. Who had learned from 5 years of resistance. Who would never surrender. Human colonies were expanding into nearby systems. Carefully, cautiously, but expanding. Building new worlds. New homes. Preparing for the day when the Vraks might return. Or when some other alien empire might arrive. Earth was ready now. Humanity was ready, and Kai? He had vanished after the war. Refused all promotions. Declined all awards. Did not want parades or monuments. He just disappeared back into the mountains. Some said he was training new fighters. Teaching the next generation. Preparing for future wars. Others said he was just living quietly. Farming, healing, trying to forget. The truth was something in between. Kai had accepted one position. Instructor at the Special Forces Academy. He taught tactics, strategy, survival. He trained the soldiers who would defend Earth, but he did it quietly. Without fame or recognition. Just a teacher. Just a soldier doing his job. His students did not know who he was at first. Just another instructor, quiet, patient, demanding. Then someone would ask about the war, about the resistance, about the ghost, and Kai would smile slightly, say nothing, but his students would figure it out. Would realize who was teaching them. And they would work harder, learn better, because they were being taught by a legend. When reporters asked him about his role in the war, Kai always gave the same answer. I did not defeat the Vraks, he would say. Earth defeated the Vraks, every person who fought, every person who resisted, every person who refused to collaborate. They are the heroes. I just made noise. Made the enemy look at me instead of everyone else. The real warriors were the people who kept fighting when I was not there. The people who held their ground. The people who never gave up. They won the war. Not me, but everyone knew better. Yes, millions had resisted. Yes, countless people had fought and died. But Kai had been the symbol, the inspiration, the proof that humans could win. His tactics had spread across the planet. His victories had given hope when hope was dying. His name had become the word the Vrax feared most. In the Vrax Empire, Earth remained forbidden. Queen Vela had declared human space off limits. Any ship that entered the solar system was to retreat immediately. No trade, no communication, no contact. The official reason was that humans were too primitive to be worth the Empire's time. But everyone knew the real reason. The Vrax were afraid. For 3,000 years they had conquered without opposition. Then they met humans, met Kai, and they learned that size and technology were not enough. They learned that some species refused to be conquered. Some soldiers refused to die. Some names refused to be forgotten. Young Vrax soldiers asked their commanders about Earth, about the occupation, about why the Empire withdrew. The answers were always vague, but veterans would tell the truth when commanders were not listening. They would describe the endless ambushes, the impossible escapes, the soldier who killed from shadows and vanished like smoke. What was his name? The young soldiers would ask, and the veterans would lower their voices. Look around to make sure no one important was listening, then whisper the answer like a curse, like a prayer, like a warning. Kai, just that, just the name. 2 syllables that carried the weight of defeat. The memory of fear, the knowledge that the Empire was not invincible, that superiority could be questioned, that humans were dangerous and the veterans would give their final warning, the warning that had spread through the entire Vrax military over the years since Earth. Pray you never meet him. Pray humanity never decides to expand into our territory, because we escaped once. We got away. We survived. But if we ever face them again, if we ever challenge Earth again, we will not be so lucky. They are stronger now, ready now, and they have millions like him. Millions of soldiers who learned his tactics, who studied his methods, who carry his name. The young soldiers would nod. They understood. Earth was forbidden not because humans were primitive, but because they were too dangerous, too determined, too unwilling to lose. The Vrax Empire had conquered 47 species, but the 48th had beaten them, had sent them running, had taught them fear. The galaxy was large. Many species lived among the stars, but only humans had defeated the Vrax. Only humans had made the Empire retreat. And at the center of that victory was one soldier, one man who refused to quit, who turned disadvantages into weapons, who made an empire afraid of a name. Kai Jinwoo, former sergeant, special forces operator, teacher, legend, the human who made the Vrax queen silent, the soldier who could not be killed, the name that meant freedom, the ghost who became real enough to haunt an empire's dreams. And somewhere on Earth, in a quiet training facility in the mountains, an unassuming man taught his students how to fight, how to survive, how to win against impossible odds. He did not look like much. Just another instructor, just another soldier, but his students knew, everyone knew, this was Kai, and the galaxy would never forget his name.